when Caleb Williams threw that pass to Cole Kmet for a 30-plus yard gain, that catch that Cole Kmet made, and it was clean. I'm thinking that ball hit the ground some way, somehow. It was superhuman what Kmet did to make that catch. It's like, they're going to score, and it's going to come down to an onside kick or something like that. And the end-of-game sequence, I really want to focus on that because it's an exercise in good coaching decisions and bad coaching decisions. And, hey, Kevin O'Connell, like end of the first half, they mismanaged the setup for the field goal, the 59-yarder that Will Reichard tried. They took their timeout too soon. There was time on the clock. If that field goal had been no good, the Bears would have been one quick completion away from a field goal of their own. It would have been a 6-point swing, potentially, if Reichard had missed that field goal. So you don't get a gold star for all four quarters if you're Kevin O'Connell. But at the end of the game, Devin, and I think they did a very good job. I haven't watched the Manning cast yet. I'll watch it today. But MDS posted something at PFT this morning about what Peyton Manning was saying in the moment, explaining very clearly in the moment what the objective was, because the Bears scored with 2:02 on the clock, and the Bears had one timeout because they wasted one on a challenge they shouldn't have activated. So they only had one left. You needed to get the Vikings the ball with 2:02 on the clock for their first play from scrimmage. So the first play would have taken you to the 2-minute warning. There's your timeout. Second play, you use your third timeout. And then they run 40 seconds off the clock on the third play. You get the ball back with enough time to have a reasonable shot to get in field goal range to force overtime. And the options were, if you're Ben Johnson and the Bears, you kick the ball off and you put it in play. Well, if you do that, there goes the 2 seconds. You do an onside kick and you hope if you recover it, it doesn't matter. You don't need that 2-minute warning. But if the Vikings recover it, it's still 2:02. Or you just kick it out of the end zone. That's what they tried to do. They tried to kick it out of the end zone, and it came up short. And that they showed on ESPN last night in the main broadcast how Ty Chandler looked over to Kevin O'Connell, and they showed Kevin O'Connell doing this. And Ty Chandler was kind of like, you could see him nod to his teammate back there like, oh, well, if this is what he wants, I'm 8 yards deep. But Peyton Manning made the great point, and I think this is critical because it changes the complexion of the final 2 minutes if Ben Johnson does this. Where's the ball go if Ty Chandler takes a knee or if the ball goes out of the end zone? It goes to the 35. Where's the ball go if you just kick it out of bounds deliberately? It goes to the 40.
The 40.
Well, those 5 yards mean nothing. The 5 yards mean nothing. The 2 seconds mean everything. Whatever you do, if you're the Bears, when that kickoff ends, the clock must say 2:02. And that was a critical late-game management flaw in Ben Johnson's first game. And it was this from Kevin O'Connell was I could see Belichick doing that. That's a Belichickian type understanding of what it takes. And it's really not. This is one of those, any kid that plays Madden understands it. But it's hard to process all that when you're out there in the middle of the blender.
No doubt about it. And I think it's so interesting too, because a lot of teams at different points, they do like those mock games. And I think when they do that as a staff is the time that they really sit there and different staff members try to think of what is something that might only happen once in 5, 8, 10 years for us as a staff, just to throw it out there and then try to go over it. And that's something right there that with these kickoff rules changing and doing so many different things that, I mean, kudos to Peyton Manning of in that moment thinking about that. But like for some of these coaches, like you're not always thinking about that's only 5-yard difference now because of the dynamic kickoff and all these different things, because the obvious choice is to just bang the ball out of the end zone, just kick the ball out of the end zone. But then I think the part that you really need to have symmetry as a coaching staff is that special teams coach saying, we'll be close, but it's not a guarantee that we can actually kick this ball where the returner doesn't have input in what actually happens. Because You can kick the ball 8-9 yards deep and think, oh, you know what I mean, we'll be fine. But you know, from being in Minnesota, Cordarrelle Patterson used to stand on 9 yards deep with maybe a half an inch between his heel and the back of the end zone, because that's how good he was as a returner to come out. So unless you had a kicker that you knew could damn near kick it through the uprights on the kickoff, it's not a guarantee. So to take that extra level of thinking and saying, you know what, rather than take this chance because we don't know for sure we can kick the ball out of the end zone, let's just kick it out of bounds. I mean, we would have praised Ben Johnson today. Even if they lost, we would have praised his thinking in the moment to go do that, to think about what defenses you need to run, to think about because I think for Ben Johnson, you're thinking, okay, we get these stops. These are the plays that I'm going to do. You're trying to think ahead of what you're going to come out with and what you're going to do. And I think that's sometimes the gift of having, and, you know, Belichick sometimes was the pseudo kind of defensive coordinator, but other times Matt Patricia, Brian Flores, different guys being the coordinators on offense and defense really gives you time to invest and be fully locked in on the clock. And in New England, we had Ernie Adams, who was that was his specialty, but the back and forth between whoever that guy is for you and as a head coach, to not have to think about the offense or defensive play calls, but only the clock management, I think sometimes is a little bit of a gift if you can do that when you talk about managing the clock and doing what's best for the team.
And apparently O'Connell told Peyton Manning before the game that they spent a lot of time this offseason working on situational football, late game situations. That was Bill Belichick's specialty. Whether it was Ernie Adams or whoever, they had that. Basically, you have to make your brain, and you have to make the brains of those to whom you have access in the moment into a supercomputer that can instantly say, here's what we do here. And I think that would be fun. Sitting around the meeting room, coming up with all these crazy situations. That would be fun. Okay, here we go. Here's a situation. This. What do you do? This. And you know, you just do that, and you it's fun, and you would learn, and you would start thinking of other situations. It becomes something you think about when you're driving your car. It's something. It's just, you challenge yourself. You stretch the rubber band of your brain as far as you can to come up with anything, because you never know when it's going to happen. And isn't it a great feeling? You know, it's that one extra little thing you studied for the exam that you weren't sure was going to be on it, and then it was on it. Remember that feeling when you're in school and there's that one thing where it's like you see that question, you're like, I put in the extra 10 minutes and I know the answer to this question. That's got to be rewarding. And last night, Kevin O'Connell knew the answer and Ben Johnson didn't. And I think one very real factor as you're surveying your options, we're going to kick it out of the end zone because, hey, all these kickers can kick it out of the end zone. They all have cannon legs. Yeah, but what did they spend all of training camp doing? I doubt they spent a lot of time practicing their kick it out of the end zone. This training camp has been about, can you place it between the 5 and the goal line? So you're not banging the ball as far as you can, as often as you can, I would assume. And that's been an afterthought. We just assume they all can do it. The one thing that you definitely can do in that setting is kick the ball out of bounds. That's all they had to do. Kick the ball out of bounds, ball's at the 40, and it changes everything. Now, alternate universe, that happens. The Vikings get the ball with 2:02 on their 40. Little play action because the clock's stopping anyway. Who cares if the pass is incomplete? And we've seen Belichick do that. We've seen other coaches who understand that it doesn't matter if you throw an incomplete pass, take full advantage of it. Because really, you know, on second down, on that drive, I saw Justin Jefferson come down to the bottom of the screen. It's like he's probably single covered. A little play. You want to deliver a dagger here. Whew. Throw a deep ball to Justin Jefferson, but you got to be smart because if it's incomplete, you're giving the Bears back the thing that you took from them by having that 2-minute warning elapse as number 32, Ty Chandler for the Vikings, was returning the ball out of the end zone.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And again, that's the higher level of coaching. And I think that was big what Peyton Manning just said, because Kevin O'Connell This isn't his first year. So now you've gotten some things that you've done, and now you're sitting there like, you know what, this offseason, we need to spend a lot more time on situational football. For Ben Johnson, all of the things you have going on that you're trying to implement, you're trying to get done, situational football, yeah, you definitely put some time into it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say he didn't do anything, but that next level, like these different situations of trying to plug them in, like you just said, and go through them with your staff, I don't know how much time. Maybe they spent a night, 2 nights, 3 nights on it. But I think for Kevin O'Connell, everything's in. You're back. Brian Flores is still back as your defensive coordinator. This staff that you've assembled, you've now been together for a while. You have time to sit there and say, hey, let's go through this. You also have built relationships within that staff that it's not an issue really to say, hey, let's go through this. I don't like that. That's wrong. Like, you can do those different things that I think for Ben Johnson, yes, it's not, I don't want to say it's the end of the world. You would have liked to handle it better, especially once you hear it and you say, damn, that would have actually been a smart thing to do. But I do think that comes along with being a first-year head coach. You don't knock everything out of the park. It's not an easy job to do. That's why we're watching guys get fired year in and year out, because it's not easy. So I do think Ben Johnson will have a chance to be better at that. But I was encouraged a little bit from watching watching Chicago and the way they played. It just wasn't good enough through 4 quarters to win. But again, you're going against a Minnesota team that, again, they've been in these situations time and time again over the last few years, and it showed up last night.
Well, and usually what's gone on the past few years is everything clicks, everything goes well, and you don't get yourself down 11 points in a game where your offense hasn't done anything. The yardage numbers were embarrassing. 6 points seemed like 6 too many. 17 for the Bears seemed like 17 too few. And to really turn it around, like, I can't remember a time I've seen the Vikings be that sluggish. And I know it's got to happen rarely for most teams, because usually when you're in that point 3 quarters in, it continues. And you don't just suddenly wake up after you've been in hibernation, no pun intended, because they were playing the Bears, but you are just in a funk for 3 quarters to turn it around. I think that's what just makes it so memorable and important to future Vikings games. They figured out a way to they're in the dark and they don't know where the switch is, and they finally find it, and they find it just in time to turn it around. I want to talk more about the Bears. Not that any Bears fans are watching today, because I know I sure as shit wouldn't be watching this show today if I was a Bears fan. I wouldn't want to watch anything. That's the way I was before I got in the business. If the Vikings lost, I want no media for like 48 hours. I don't want to hear any of it. I don't want to see any of it. I don't care. Let's get to the next game. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.